December 7, 1944, 03 for 7 hours. The East China Sea, 14 nautical miles southeast of Formosa. The Japanese cargo vessel Miyasen Maru cuts through black water, her hold packed with rubber, tin, and aviation fuel bound for the home islands. On the bridge, Captain Hideaki Tanaka scans the horizon through rain-streaked glass. The convoy of 7 freighters moves in tight formation, flanked by 2 destroyers, whose depth charges glisten under deck lamps. Tokyo has promised this route is secure. The Imperial Navy's submarine picket line patrols these waters. Allied undersea raiders, they've been told, cannot penetrate this far west. At 0349, a shudder runs through Miyasen Maru's hull knot, the groan of storm swell, but something sharper, metallic, alien. Tanaka's executive officer shouts a warning, but the words dissolve in a deafening roar. A column of white fire erupts amid. The ship lurches violently to starboard. Men tumble across the deck. Steel plates buckle inward as seawater floods the engine room. Within 90 seconds, the freighter's bow lifts skyward, propeller blades thrashing empty air, and she slides backward into the abyss. 300 meters to port, the tanker Ao Maru explodes in a fireball that paints the clouds orange. The destroyer Kurtik charges toward the last known bearing, hurling depth charges into the void. Sonar pings echo against thermoclines. Nothing. The enemy has vanished like smoke. By dawn, 4 ships are gone. No wreckage. No oil slicks wide enough to track. Just silence and the cold mathematics of loss. U.S. Submarine Force Pacific Fleet War Diary. December 1944. This is not an isolated incident. This is the pattern. From the Coral Sea to the Sea of Japan, American submarines are erasing Japan's maritime empire with surgical precision. Month after month, tonnage sunk, climbs into the hundreds of thousands. Tankers carrying crude from the Dutch East Indies never reach Yokohama. Troop transports bound for Manila disappear mid. Iron ore from Manchuria, bauxite from Borneo, rice from Indochina all swallowed by an undersea blockade, so effective that by mid-1945, Japan's industrial output will collapse to a fraction of 1941 levels. U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, 1946. Yet Japan's own submarine fleet, once a source of national pride, manned by elite crews trained for years in the art of silent warfare, achieves almost nothing. By war's end, Japanese submarines will have sunk fewer than 24 Allied cargo vessels, and only a handful of warships. American supply lines from San Francisco to Brisbane run unbroken. Convoys cross the Pacific unmolested. The contrast is so stark, so mathematically brutal, that post-war analysts will struggle to explain it. How can 2 nations with comparable submarine technologies produce such wildly asymmetric outcomes? How can one side strangle an empire while the other barely scratches enemy logistics? The answer lies not in courage. Both sides fought with desperate ferocity, but in doctrine, technology, and a hidden revolution in undersea warfare that most histories overlook. In December 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy operates 73 submarines, many of them large, long-range fleet boats like the I-class cruiser Submarines, some displacing over 2,500 tons and carrying floatplanes for reconnaissance. Jane's fighting ships. 1941. These vessels are engineering marvels, fast on the surface, capable of transoceanic voyages, armed with Type 95 torpedoes whose oxygen-fueled engines leave no telltale wakes. Japan's submarine doctrine, however, is rigid. Submarines exist to hunt enemy capital ships, battleships, carriers, cruisers, not the unglamorous cargo vessels that feed industrial war. Convoy interdiction is considered dishonorable. Beneath the samurai spirit of decisive fleet engagement, crews train endlessly to stalk warships in open ocean duels. Merchant traffic is someone else's problem. The U.S. Navy, by contrast, begins the war with 51 fleet submarines in the Pacific, mostly Gato and Tambora-class boats displacing 1,500 tons, armed with 10 torpedo tubes and diesel-electric propulsion systems that can push them to 20 knots on the surface. U.S. Navy Bureau of Ships, 1942. But American doctrine is murky, its submarine force underfunded and overlooked. Peacetime training emphasized caution. Pre-war torpedo technology is plagued by catastrophic failures. Magnetic exploders detonate prematurely or not at all. Depth-keeping mechanisms send fish diving beneath targets. In the first year of combat, American skippers fired dozens of torpedoes and watch in disbelief as enemy hulls sail away intact. Commander, Submarine, Force Pacific Fleet, after-action reports, 1942-43. By 1943, however, something begins to shift. The failures galvanize change. Engineers at the Naval Torpedo Station in Newport, Rhode Island, and technicians aboard submarine tenders in Pearl Harbor dissect every malfunction. They discover that the Mark 14 torpedo's magnetic exploder is hypersensitive to Earth's magnetic field variations, detonating too soon or too late. The contact exploder's firing pin is too weak, crumpling on impact rather than triggering detonation. Depth regulators are missed. One by one, fixes cascade through the fleet. By mid-1943, the Mark 14 becomes lethal. Bureau of Ordnance, Technical Bulletin, October 1943. But the torpedo is only part of the equation. American submarines now carry a technological advantage so potent, so invisible, that Japanese commanders never fully grasp its existence until after surrender. In the cramped control rooms of boats like USS Wahoo, USS Tang, and USS Silversides, crews operate radar systems that can detect enemy ships beyond visual range. In total darkness, through rain and fog, the SJ's surface search radar, developed by Bell Laboratories and Raytheon engineers, sweeps the horizon with microwave pulses at 10-centimeter wavelength, painting targets on cathode ray screens with startling clarity. Technical Manual for SJ Radar, U.S. Navy, 1943. A Japanese convoy steaming at 12 knots 30 miles away appears as bright blips. Long before lookouts could possibly see a periscope, American skippers position themselves ahead of the target's track, submerged to periscope depth, and wait. The enemy sails into the kill zone blind. No warning, no evasion, just sudden, catastrophic explosions blooming along the convoy's flanks. Japanese submarines carry no comparable radar. Their crews rely on binoculars and intuition, scanning dark horizons with human eyes that tire and miss and blink. Their sonars are primitive, their fire control computers rudimentary. Worse still, Japan's naval codes are compromised. American cryptanalysts at Station HYPO in Pearl Harbor, led by Commander Joseph Rochefort and a team of mathematicians and linguists whose names remained classified for decades, crack the JN25 code system. National Security Agency Declassified Documents, 1979. Every convoy route, every tanker departure schedule, every patrol sector assignment flows into US hands. Submarine commanders receive ultra-intelligence briefings before sailing, exact coordinates, ship names, cargo manifests, escort strengths. They do not hunt blindly. They ambush with FOREKNOWLEDGE. By autumn 1944, Japan's merchant marine is hemorrhaging. Oil imports plummet. Factories idle. Rice shipments falter. Civilians begin to starve. The Imperial Navy, desperate, orders submarines to abandon fleet operations and transport supplies to bypassed garrison struck Rabaul, Wake Island. Submarines become glorified cargo vessels, ferrying ammunition and medicine to doomed outposts instead of sinking enemy tonnage. Imperial Japanese Navy Operations Orders, October 1944. And still, American submarines close in, tightening the noose, erasing Japan's lifelines, one convoy at a time. But what, exactly, gave these underwater hunters their edge beyond radar, beyond code-breaking, beyond doctrine? What hidden machinery and human ingenuity transformed America's submarine force from a flawed, frustrated fleet into the most lethal commerce raiders in naval history? The answer lies in the silent revolution that began in a Detroit basement and ended in the depths of the Pacific's darkest waters. The revolution begins not with admirals or weapons designers, but with a 32-year-old engineer named John Holtzclaw, hunched over blueprints in a converted warehouse in Cleveland, Ohio. Winter of 1942. Holtzclaw works for the Torpedo Data, computer, civilian contractor most Americans have never heard of, and his assignment is to solve a problem that has plagued naval warfare since submarines first dove beneath the waves: how to hit a moving target from a moving platform when you cannot see either one clearly. The TDC Mark III, the analog fire control computer Holtzclaw and his team perfect by early 1943, is a mechanical brain weighing 500 pounds, crammed with gears, cams, and differential analyzers that continuously calculate target speed, bearing, range, and angle and vow. Technical Manual TM 91575A, Bureau of Ordnance, 1943. A skipper feeds an estimates target speed 14 knots, bearing 270 degrees, range 3,000 yards under TDC. Automatically adjusts torpedo gyro angles in real time as the submarine maneuvers. It compensates for water temperature, torpedo, speed, degradation, even the curve of the Earth over long shots. In the hands of a skilled crew, the TDC transforms guesswork into geometry. Japanese captains, zigzagging frantically to evade torpedoes, discover that American fish anticipate their turns, striking amidships no matter which way they twist. Commander, Submarine Force Pacific Fleet Intelligence Bulletin, April 1944. Japan has no equivalent device. Japanese submarines calculate firing solutions manually, using slide rules and intuition. A target's evasive maneuver means starting over. Precious seconds evaporate. Opportunities vanish. The technological gap is invisible. No explosions announce its existence, but it is absolute. Then there is the SJ radar. Mounted on the periscope shears of every American fleet boat by mid-1943, engineers at Bell Telephone Laboratories and the Radiation Laboratory at MIT refined the magnetron tube, a British invention, into a compact, reliable system that radiates 10-centimeter microwaves in sweeping arcs. Radiation Laboratory Technical Report Series, 1945. The SJ can detect a surfaced submarine at 9 miles, a destroyer at 12, a large cargo ship at 15. It pierces fog, rain, and the absolute darkness of moonless Pacific nights. American submarines surface after sunset, charge their batteries at high speed, and hunt with electronic eyes that never tire. They close to knife-fighting range, 1,500 yards or lessened. Unleash spreads of 4 to 6 torpedoes in rapid succession. By the time Japanese lookouts spot the whitewakes streaking toward them, it is far too late. USS Wahoo War Patrol Report, January 1943. Japanese radar development lags years behind. The Imperial Navy's Type 22 surface search radar, introduced in 1943, operates at longer wavelengths, 150 centimeters, producing grainy, indistinct returns. Japanese Naval Technical Research Archives, post-war survey. Its range barely exceeds 10 miles under ideal conditions. Worse, Japanese doctrine discourages radar use. Commanders fear that radar emissions will betray their positions to enemy direction finders. They prefer silence and stealth. This caution becomes a noose. American submarines radiate continuously, hunting aggressively. Knowing Japanese forces lack the receivers to detect SJ frequencies, the hunters become invisible predators, while the hunted remain blind. U.S. Naval Technical Mission to Japan, 1945-46. But technology alone does not explain the carnage. Doctrine how submarines are employed determines whether sophisticated machinery becomes a war-winning advantage or an expensive curiosity. American submarine doctrine undergoes a brutal Darwinian transformation in 1942 and 1943. Early in the war, cautious skippers who avoid risk are tolerated. By mid-1943, they are relieved of command. Admiral Charles Lockwood, Commander Submarine Force Pacific Fleet, demands aggression. He studies patrol reports obsessively, identifies timid captains, and replaces them with killer's men like Dudley Mush, Morton, Richard O'Kane, Eugene Fluckey, Samuel Deley. These commanders hunt with savage efficiency, closing to point-blank range, firing from multiple angles, reloading and attacking again before dawn. O'Kane's USS Tang will sink 33 ships in 5 patrols before her final fatal mission. In October 1944, USS Tang War Patrol reports. 1943-44. Fluckey's USS Barb penetrates minefields, bombards shore installations with deck guns, and in one legendary patrol lands commandos to blow up a railway bridge. The only ground combat action by submarine crew in the Pacific Theater. USS Barb War Patrol Report. 11. July 1945. Japanese submarine doctrine, by contrast, calcifies even as merchant tonnage losses mount. The Imperial Navy refuses to redirect submarines against American supply lines. Submarines remain shackled to fleet support, roles scouting for battleship engagements that never materialize, launching futile attacks against aircraft carriers screened by destroyer pickets. transporting supplies to starving garrisons. When Captain Haruki Ito of the submarine I-26 sinks the American aircraft carrier USS Wasp in September 1942, it is celebrated as a vindication of fleet doctrine. Imperial Japanese Navy War Diary, September 1942. But it is an outlier. Japanese submarines achieve no comparable success afterward. They spend the war chasing shadows while American boats slaughter cargo vessels by the hundred. Consider the battle for Convoy HI-71, February 17, 1944, South China Sea, 250 miles west of Manila. The convoy consists of 9 cargo ships and tankers, escorted by 4 destroyers, carrying rubber, oil, and aviation fuel from Singapore to Japan. Desperately needed resources as American B-29 raids intensify and fuel stocks dwindle. Confidential monthly anti-submarine bulletin, February 1944. At 0230 hours, USS Poggi, skippered by Commander Ralph Metcalf, detects the convoy on SJ radar at 18,000 yards, bearing 045 degrees. The night is overcast, visibility near zero. Japanese lookouts see nothing. Metcalf surfaces and runs ahead of the convoy at 17 knots, calculating intercept courses with his TDC. At 0310, he submerges to periscope depth, positions Poggi broadside to the convoy's track, and waits. The TDC hums, gears clicking softly, continuously updating firing solutions as the range closes. At 0324, with the lead tanker at 1,200 yards, Metcalf fires a spread of 4 torpedoes from his forward tubes, 8-second intervals between shots. 45 seconds later, 3 explosions ripple through the darkness. The tanker, Nikaya Maru, erupts in flames, aviation fuel igniting in a fireball visible for 20 miles. She sinks in 4 minutes. USS Poggi War Patrol Report No. 6, February 1944. Chaos engulfs the convoy. Destroyers race toward the attack bearing, hurling depth charges in wild patterns. But Poggi has already slipped away, reloading torpedoes at 300 feet. At 0410, Metcalf surfaces 8 miles astern of the scattered convoy, uses radar to select a new target, the cargo ship Tamatsumaru, and stalks her for 90 minutes. At 0545, just before dawn, he fires again. 2 hits. Tamatsumaru settles slowly, her holds flooded. Crew abandoning ship in lifeboats. Confidential monthly anti-submarine bulletin, February 1944. USS Raton, patrolling 30 miles south, receives Metcalf's contact report via encrypted radio and races north. At 11:20 hours, Commander James Davis intercepts the remnants of HI-71, now down to 7 ships. He attacks submerged, sinking the freighter Ryusei Maru with a 3-torpedo spread. The escorts counterattack furiously, dropping over 60 depth, charges, but Raton evades at 400 feet. Slipping beneath a thermal layer that deflects sonar pulses. USS Raton, War Patrol Report No. 4, February 1944. By sunset, Convoy HI-71 has lost 4 ships, 43,000 tons of vital cargo to just 2 submarines. Japanese after-action reports described the attacks as incomprehensible. Enemy submarines appeared to possess foreknowledge of convoy routes, and attacked with uncanny precision despite total darkness and poor sea conditions. Writes the escort commander in his report to Combined Fleet Headquarters. Recommend immediate reassessment of convoy security protocols. Captured Japanese naval documents. Interrogation Report No. 455, 1945, closing parenthesis. He does not know that American codebreakers have read every word of HI-71's sailing orders 3 days before the convoy left port. He does not know that SJ radar allowed Metcalf and Davis to maneuver freely in pitch blackness. He does not know that TDC computers calculated firing solutions faster and more accurately than any human crew could manage. He knows only that ships are dying, that the enemy seems omniscient, that the sea itself has turned hostile. And this is merely 1 convoy, 1 night, 2 submarines. Across the Pacific, from the Aleutians to the Java Sea, American boats repeat this execution 50 times, 100 times, 200 times. The Mark 14 torpedo, once a humiliation, becomes a weapon of industrial-scale destruction. Production lines at the Naval Torpedo Station in Alexandria, Virginia, and the Pontiac Motor Division in Michigan churn out 15,000 torpedoes in 1944 alone, each one benefiting from iterative fixes and field reports from frontline crews. Bureau of Ordnance Production Report, December 1944. Submariners trust their weapons now. They fire with confidence. Hit rates soar above 50%. Japanese merchant captains begin refusing assignments to the South China Sea and East China Sea routes. Crew morale collapses. Sailors whisper that American submarines are commanded by demons, that the enemy possesses supernatural powers. Dramatized composite from post-war interrogations. We could not see them. We could not hear them. They struck from nowhere and vanished like ghosts. Our escorts were helpless. Our prayers were useless. By October 1944, the strangulation is complete. Though Japan does not yet realize the corpse has stopped breathing, the numbers tell a story more brutal than any single battle. In 1942, American submarines sank 180 Japanese merchant vessels, totaling 725,000 tons. In 1943, the toll climbed to 284 ships and 1.3 million tons. In 1944, the killing reached industrial scale, 492 ships, 2.7 million tons sent to the ocean floor. U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey. The War Against Japanese Transportation, 1947. Japan begins the war with 6 million tons of merchant shipping. By August 1945, less than 1.5 million tons remain afloat, and most of those vessels cower in harbors too shallow for submarine operations. Unable to move for lack of fuel or cargo worth transporting, the cascading effects ripple outward like cracks in fractured steel. Oil refineries in Yokohama and Kawasaki shut down in spring 1945, their storage tanks bone dry. Tankers from Sumatra and Borneo resting in pieces 4,000 meters beneath the South China Sea. Without oil, Japan's mechanized divisions in Manchuria become static garrisons. Aircraft sit grounded, pilots trained but unable to fly. Combat sorties. The Mitsubishi A6M0, once the scourge of Allied airmen, becomes a museum piece not because American Hellcats outfight it, but because there is no fuel to lift it off runways. Japanese Monograph No. 72. Aviation Fuel Supply, U.S. Army Far East Command, 1952. Food becomes scarce. Rice imports from Indochina and Thailand, which fed millions in Japan's industrial cities, cease almost entirely by early 1945. Urban ration levels fall to 1,500 calories per day, then 1,200, then lower. Workers in Osaka munitions plants faint at their lathes from malnutrition. Civilian morale, already strained by B-29 firebombing raids, collapses into sullen desperation. The Imperial government exhorts citizens to eat acorns, to cultivate sweet potatoes in window boxes, to endure with Yamato Damashii, the spirit of Japan, but spirit cannot synthesize calories. Home Ministry Internal Memorandum. April 1945. Captured post-war. Iron ore shipments from Manchuria and the Philippines dwindle to a trickle. Steel production in 1945 drops to 1/5 of 1944 levels. Factories that once stamped out tanks and artillery shells now produce bamboo spears for civilian militia. A medieval regression forced by industrial starvation. U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey. The effects of strategic bombing on Japan's war economy, 1946. The Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. The vast conquered empire stretching from Burma to the Gilbert Islands becomes a liability rather than an asset. Garrisons in Rabaul, Truk, and Wake Island wither on the vine, cut off from resupply. Their soldiers reduced to subsistence farming, while American submarines prowl offshore, sinking any vessel foolish enough to attempt relief missions. The psychological toll is immeasurable, but documented in fragments. Post-war interrogations of Japanese naval officers reveal a pervasive sense of betrayal and confusion. Commander Makitsu, captain of the submarine I-58, which will later torpedo the cruiser USS Indianapolis in a rare Japanese submarine. Success describes the war's final year as an agony of futility. Direct quote. Interrogation report, NAV 85. October 1945. We hunted American convoys across the Pacific and found nothing. Empty seas. We were told their supply lines were vulnerable, that our submarines could strangle their logistics. It was a lie, or perhaps we were simply incapable. Meanwhile, our own convoys burned. Every week, we heard of more losses. Tankers, freighters, troopships, The Americans seem to know where every vessel sailed before it left port. He is correct, though he does not know the mechanism. By mid-1944, American codebreakers at Station HYPO and OP20G in Washington have achieved near-total penetration of Japanese naval codes. Joseph Rochefort's team, working 18-hour shifts in windowless basements, decrypt convoy routing orders sometimes within hours of transmission. National Security Agency, SRH 355, History of OP20G, 1978. Intelligence is fused with submarine patrol assignments through a coordination system unprecedented in naval warfare. Admiral Lockwood's Submarine Operations Center in Pearl Harbor resembles a corporate logistics hub more than a military command. Post-wall-sized charts track every American boat's position, enemy convoy schedules, weather patterns, fuel states, torpedo inventory. Submarines are vectored toward targets like chess pieces, multiple boats converging on high-value convoys to ensure no escape. Commander Submarine Force Pacific Fleet Command History, 1944. The men who execute this slaughter pay a price measured in claustrophobia, terror, and silent endurance. Life aboard a Gaito-class submarine is an intimate hell. 312 feet long, 16 feet wide at the beam, crammed with 80 men in their collective sweat, diesel fumes, battery acid vapors, and the omnipresent reek of unwashed bodies after 60 days. Submerged USS Silverside's Crew Diary, March 1944. Depth charge attacks become routines of controlled panic. Hull plates groaning under pressure, light bulbs shattering, men gripping stanchions as explosions walk overhead, praying the next one does not crack the pressure hull and send the Pacific pouring in at 400 pounds per square inch. 52 American submarines are lost during the war. 3,505 submariners killed, the highest casualty rate of any U.S. military branch. 22% U.S. submarine losses. World War II, Naval History Division, 1963, yet they persist, patrol after patrol, because they understand the strategic calculus. Lieutenant Commander Eugene Fluckey, after his 11th war patrol aboard USS Barb, writes in his private log, "Every tanker we sink is 100 aircraft that never fly. Every freighter carrying steel is a dozen tanks never built. We are not warriors in the romantic sense. We are industrial saboteurs operating at sea." The log remains classified until 1983. Eugene Fluckey Personal Papers, U.S. Naval Academy Archives. Engineers and technicians sustain the campaign as much as combat crews. At submarine tenders anchored in Midway, Saipan, and Fremantle, maintenance teams work miracles under impossible conditions. Torpedoes are disassembled, inspected, and rebuilt between patrols. Radar systems, battered by salt air and humidity, are calibrated and repaired by technicians who learned electronics in Depression-era vocational schools, and now keep multi-million-dollar weapons platforms operational with improvised tools and sheer ingenuity. Submarine tender operational reports, 1943-45. The SJ radar's magnetron tubes, fragile and prone to failure, are produced by Raytheon's factory in Waltham, Massachusetts, where women workers, many of them housewives before Pearl Harbor, assemble vacuum tubes with tolerances measured in microns. Their labor invisible but indispensable. Raytheon Company War Production Records, 1945. Japan's submarine force, by contrast, disintegrates into irrelevance. By 1945, most surviving boats are confined to transport runs or kamikaze-style suicide missions. The I for OO class, submarine aircraft carriers, technological marvels capable of launching 3 floatplane bombers, complete their construction too late to matter. Their planned attack on the Panama Canal is aborted days before execution, when Emperor Hirohito announces surrender in August 1945. Japanese monograph number 102, Submarine Operations, 1952. The dream of decisive submarine warfare dies, not in battle but in doctrinal paralysis and technological inferiority. The strategic legacy reshapes naval thinking for generations. The U.S. Navy emerges from World War II convinced that submarines armed with intelligence, radar, and fire control computers can dominate maritime commerce and project power far beyond traditional gunboat diplomacy. This conviction drives Cold War submarine development, nuclear propulsion, sonar arrays, ballistic missile tubes, the Los Angeles-class fast attack submarines hunting Soviet shipping lanes in the 1980s are intellectual, descendants of the Gato-class boats that gutted Japan's logistics. Network-centric warfare, the doctrine that dominates U.S. military thinking in the Gulf War and beyond, traces its roots to 1943 Pearl Harbor, where codebreakers, intelligence analysts, and submarine skippers fused information into lethality. Norman Friedman, U.S. submarines since 1945-1994. For Japan, the lesson is equally stark. Industrial nations cannot wage modern war without secure logistics. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, established in 1954, obsesses over convoy protection, anti-submarine warfare, and secure communications corrections for failures that cost an empire. Japanese naval officers study the American submarine campaign the way trauma surgeons study fatal wounds, dissecting every mistake, every doctrinal blindness, every technological gap. Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force History, Volume 2, 1955 to 1970. The human cost transcends statistics. An estimated 116,000 Japanese merchant seamen died during the war, most of them drowned in the dark after torpedo strikes, clinging to wreckage in shark-infested waters, waiting for rescues that never came. Japanese Ministry of Health and Welfare, War Dead Registry, 1964. American submariners haunted by the faces they glimpsed through periscopes and sailors scrambling across tilting decks. Lifeboats lowering frantically carry those images into old age. Richard O'Kane, awarded the Medal of Honor for his Pacific patrols, later describes the moral complexity. We were killers who slept soundly because we understood necessity. Every ship we sank shortened the war. Every convoy destroyed saved Allied lives. But we were still killers, and the ocean remembers every soul it takes. Richard O'Kane, Clear the Bridge, 1977. On August 15, 1945, when Emperor Hirohito's radio